Welcome to Defender of the Republic. My next guest is a visionary entrepreneur and genius, celebrated for his innovative approach to business, technology, and finance. As the former CEO and founder of Overstock.com, he transformed an online retailer, a small online retailer, into a billion-dollar giant, pioneering e-commerce in ways that set new standards in the industry. Known for his fearless approach to challenging the status quo, he's not only disrupted traditional retail, but also delved into emerging fields such as blockchain technology, which I hope he'll teach me. But my favorite qualities about this guest is that he's an advocate for freedom, transparency, and combating corruption. His new docuseries, The Enemy Within, is a must-see that we will be discussing in depth today. Please join me in welcoming one of the most dynamic and influential thinkers and patriots of our time, Patrick Byrne. Hi, Patrick.
Hello, Katie. Great to be
Hopefully
on.
I did you some justice in that intro.
I don't even know what you said.
Oh, really? You didn't hear it?
No.
Well, I did say that you were one of the geniuses of our time, and I'm very grateful for everything that you've done in terms of advocacy and protecting our freedoms and all that you have done in terms of combating corruption everywhere, not just in corporate America and in the finance world, but in politics in Washington and all of it. So thank you for all that you've done.
It's my honor. This country's been better to me than I had any right to expect. So seems like the least I could do.
Well, you inspire me, and hopefully this movie will help to inspire many others. You've had an incredible life, not an easy one, filled with a ton of challenges. And this movie really does an incredible job of talking about all of the things that you've been through, and the wonderful influence that your parents had on you, especially your mom, which was really, really cool.
Warren Buffett told me once, Patrick, most people try to win the lottery once in life. You won it twice. You won the Connecticut State Lottery when you got your dad, but you won the Irish sweepstakes in your mom.
Oh,
And
I
I think,
love that.
yeah, he was right. She's super special. She's still alive, 92.
Wow, that's amazing.
Sharp as
God bless
tack.
her. That's
Sharp as can be.
They don't make them like they used to.
She's
Yeah.
30.
So the film's very eye-opening. And for those that haven't followed you or heard your story, I want to make sure that everyone goes out and checks out the docuseries, The Enemy Within, and I will have this scrolling at the bottom. But what is the message that you would like your viewers to come away with after watching the film?
Well, our government, DC, is hopelessly corrupt. There's no, well, but forgetting the broad generalities like that, the real issue is that around Thanksgiving of 2015, Barack Obama started a coup to take over the government. And he started against Hillary Clinton. And by enticing her to take a bribe that he could then blackmail her with. He also had this Russian collusion hoax set up. And when Trump won unexpectedly, it all morphed into the Russian collusion hoax. And I say that as the guy they had bribing Hillary Clinton and romancing Maria Butina.
Right.
So it's not a theory. Now someone could say I'm lying, but this is not some conspiracy theory. I was in the middle of it. This is actually what happened. I could say I'm lying, but it's not a theory.
The film does talk about Operation Snow Globe.
Mhm.
My question about that in particular is, do you believe that Hillary Clinton was aware at any time or is aware now about this operation?
Oh yes, oh yes. She knows all about it. She knows all about it. She even went out and said, "Well, I never met Patrick Byrne." She's correct. We've never met face to face, but she doesn't know that there was a point over several weeks where I was, say, shaping her environment and bringing the right people into her. And yeah, she knows all about Operation Snow Globe and my claims. I'm probably not on her Christmas card list.
Darn. Definitely a Christmas card list you don't want to be a part of. So in terms of the Operation Snow Globe, this is where I had major questions because it does seem that these agents you were speaking to that you called essentially your handlers were very adamant that Hillary was going to be the next president for the next 8 years, and then Michelle.
Right.
How was that plan thwarted? In your opinion, you may not know, but how was that plan thwarted, and how did Donald Trump become president in 2016 if that was their plan?
Well, you have to remember that in January of 2016, Hillary was on more or less a coronation tour. I mean, she seemed like an unstoppable force.
Mhm.
The Trump phenomenon, Trump was still duking it out with some other Republicans. And it hadn't turned into this landslide that it became.
Right.
I mean, it had not it turned into this MAGA movement. So Hillary looked unstoppable. And it was thwarted because Donald Trump got a movement going. Donald Trump and Michael Flynn, who's kind of the PhD of movements, they got this whole movement going, and the movement stopped. In addition, I believe Hillary thought that the election was going to be rigged for her, and it didn't. It didn't get rigged for her, and I think that that was a big surprise. In fact, I hear that I think that maybe the rigging was disrupted, and we all know the stories about her at 3 o'clock in the morning, the night she lost,
Mhm.
throwing wine bottles in her room, throwing wine bottles. But what's not generally well known is that she was in there yelling at her people, saying, you told me you had this fixed. You told me this was set. What happened?" Yeah, she
Right.
thought it was going to be rigged for her. But she did have, she had the media on her side. She had everything. It was a coronation tour for Hillary Clinton. She didn't even think she had a contest. And they had deliberately, people also forget this, the mainstream media forgets they created Donald Trump. They wanted to have a Republican candidate who would be the easiest for Hillary to beat. And they got the guy with the biggest negatives,
Mhm.
and they gave him $4 billion worth of free publicity from the summer of 2015 until he became the nominee in the summer of 2016. Some Harvard professor figured this out. It was $4 billion of free publicity they gave him.
Wow.
So, because they really wanted it to be him because they thought Hillary would crush him.
Yeah.
And joke was on them.
I love
The
it.
mainstream media hates the the MAGA movement, but they forget they created it. If you go back to 2015, it was night after night. He was just interviewed on CNN, on everything. They interviewed him, and they did everything to prop him up. They wanted him to be the nominee.
Right.
And then they thought they were going to pull the rug out. They thought they were going to pull the rug out from under him because they had that Access Hollywood tape. They had some things they thought would kill his career.
That was the best thing for them in terms of ratings. They Donald Trump helped them
Yeah.
for it. So the other question I had was, do you think this Bunsen burner plan was also in place for Joe Biden?
Well, I think they didn't need a Bunsen burner with Joe Biden. So the Bunsen burner plan was what was described to me as they were going to let Hillary be in, and then the bribe information was going to sit on a Bunsen burner that Barack Obama would control, even though he was not
Right.
in the White House. And then he would run her for 8 years, and then Michelle would run. I think with Biden, they didn't need a Bunsen burner. Biden and Obama were, it's kind of funny. There's two wings of the Democratic Party, the Clinton and the Obama.
Mhm.
And Biden came up through corruption with the Clinton, but Biden was acceptable to Obama. So Biden's presidency was itself created by Obama, and he was a finger puppet for Obama for the first 3 years. Susan Rice, was over at Obama's house in D.C. every morning, which just itself, I mean, Obama has no respect for the traditions of our country. It's always been de rigueur that people leave the presidency and they move well out of D.C.
Right.
And Obama just thinks he's above all that kind of stuff. So he stayed 8 blocks away. Susan Rice was over at his house every morning, and then over in Joe Biden's, she had some innocuous title at the White House, but she was really, if Obama was the puppet master, she was the strings. They came to a falling out in March of this year. March, there was a big shouting match, it is said, between Biden and Obama in the Oval Office one Saturday morning. Obama was telling him to step down. He wanted Biden to step down and Michelle to run. Biden wouldn't step down. And that led to a real rift between them, culminating in Obama kind of threw him under the wheel, under the tires, by giving into him and letting him do, or maybe even suggesting, letting him do this debate with Trump in June.
Yeah.
You know, that was a setup. And for example, Mike is such a chess player. He said Trump should not do that debate because he's going to crush Biden in the debate, which is going to give opportunity to say, for the Democrats to say, Biden's lost his fastball. He needs to step down. We need another candidate. Whereas if Trump had not done that debate, they would have just been stuck with Biden. Biden up through the nomination. Biden would have taken the nomination, then do a debate with Trump. Trump would have flattened them, and they would have been stuck with this terrible candidate. So it was kind of, I think,
Interesting.
is tactical error that made things a little more difficult for Trump than it had to be. But yeah, Trump's Trump. He knows his own mind, and he carried the day anyway. But if they had not done that debate in June, the Democrats would have been stuck with Biden.
Well, do you think there's any truth to the idea that Joe Biden preemptively endorsed Kamala before the Democrats could insert their own candidate?
Yes, I've seen that of late, and that matches what I've heard from the inside for 4 months, that they expected Joe Biden to say he's not running again. Then there was going to be an open primary, and Michelle was going to be the candidate.
Right.
But Biden, to get even with what had happened to him, they basically humiliated him.
Yeah.
And they let the press takes its cues from the Obama wing of the Democratic Party. And so for 3.5 years, they hadn't said anything about Joe's cognitive decline. But then Biden did that debate with Trump, and then the floodgates opened, and the press was told, go ahead and trash Biden, trash Biden. So Biden really felt thrown out. And Biden had a long and honorable career as a senator. He used to be, and actually until rather late in the game, I was at least willing to salute and say say he was our president. Some things happened that made me realize I couldn't even do that. But he had an honorable career, and instead he knew he'd been thrown under the tires, was going to go down as a laughingstock. So he, I think, did. That's why 3 minutes later, after he got removed, Kamala eventually, I think, agreed to 25th Amendment. So he went out and he endorsed Kamala, which kind of shut off this open primary. That's highly plausible to me, and it matches some inside information I have as well.
So going back to the film and kind of staying in line with what we're talking about, the film shows this 2006 Senate Judiciary Committee that you met with. And looking at who the members were of that committee, there are people on there like Joe Biden, Lindsey Graham, Dianne Feinstein, Chuck Schumer. Were they a part of those meetings that you were in?
They were not a part of those meetings. None of those were.
Do you think they were aware of this letter that the movie talks about?
I don't know, but Chuck Schumer was aware of me. We got into it once in the Senate. I was asked to come and speak to a group of about 40 people. Back when I was fighting Wall Street, I was asked to come and speak to a group of about 40 or 50 people from across the federal bureaucracy. And Arlen Specter had set it up. And there were agents from everywhere, from Treasury and IRS to the DOJ and everything. And I was asked to come and explain. I actually put together a live panel of whistleblowers.
Wow.
And when I did that, Chuck Schumer showed up in the room just as we were about to open and said, I'm the ranking senator on this and that. This is inappropriate. This is a banking committee. I'm the only senator on both this committee and the banking committee. I demand this be shut down. He actually came up and seized the mic next to me. And I said, well, sir, I'm here at the invitation of Arlen Specter. There's Arlen Specter's chief of staff. I'm going to do what he says. But literally, he came up to the podium. He was next to me. He's a little guy. He was next to me, and he took the microphone and was holding it and saying this. And I took it back and said that.
I love
and
it.
I said, so, and that man stood up and said, Chairman Specter wanted this meeting to go on, and we've invited Mr. Byrne, and Mr. Byrne's going to speak. And Schumer stormed out of the room. So that's my one interaction. Schumer is Senator Goldman. Goldman Sachs has their own dedicated senator, and that's Senator Chuck Schumer.
Wow, that's incredible. And it doesn't surprise me at all. But so this letter intrigues me. The letter that's referenced in the movie or the docuseries. So this letter essentially is like there was a term that was used in the movie. It gave you what was it, leverage or the ability to have extraordinary latitude. So here's
The
my
letter,
question about
okay.
that. If you were to utilize extraordinary latitude and you one day needed this letter, who has access to the letter? Are you able, is that letter there, still there?
Oh, the letter's still there, and they've confirmed it's still there. I think that they were mad that I went public about it all, but I had to go public because of what I'm doing. They're the ones who said they would back me up, so I've gone public. I've heard that the DOJ would have indicted me somewhere in these last 4 years were it not for the fact that there are still senators alive who were in that room. And yeah, the letter refers to, and tell me if this is not ahead of its time. The letter has a line about how the Judiciary Committee is concerned about systemic corruption infiltrating the federal institutions of our nation's government. And then the next line was the Senate Judiciary Committee requests that Patrick Byrne be shown extraordinary latitude under the laws of the United States to disrupt this corruption or something very active like that. So those are the only two lines I remember. And I was really just given like 10 seconds to scan this, but 15 seconds, and that's what I saw.
I don't know,
So,
you have a great memory though.
well, if they want to, so, and they told me this is going to be the rest of your life in a safe. And the last time we did this was World War II. That American, there was a concern of German sympathizers in government. So an American who had a lot of contacts in government was asked to become, in some sense, a German sympathizer and help flush out the others. But it had not been done in 65 years. But looking back, that's when things really started. That was 2006. But you'd have to say, I think that we've been on a slow descent into corruption ever since then. And Barack Obama, who I didn't vote for the man, but I was not antagonistic to him. And when he was president, I had no problems with him initially. Well, I had no problems with him, but then some of the people I was working for, I started coming around. I was probably snooping a little too aggressively, but certain things weren't adding up, is what happened. Certain things were not adding up in certain orders I was giving. Will never be able to make public what that was about. But starting around 2010, I could tell there was some really odd stuff going on that didn't make sense. And then by 2015 is when these orders came that are what are depicted in the movie that were purely corrupt. And of course, unbeknownst to them, I had in a sense been sent to investigate them. The way I think of it is 300 million Americans wrote me a letter that said our government's going corrupt and you're going to stop it for us. So the more corrupt it got, the more I showed I was willing to take part. That's
Right.
really,
It's a lot
I,
to put on your shoulders, I would imagine. I can't even imagine being given that directive, like, okay, no pressure. But I mean, in terms of all of the things you've gone through and knowing that there was some fear in these agents that you were working with at some points. Did you have fear for your life in all of this stuff? And are you in fear of your life, that your life's in danger right now?
well, I don't really, in this, I don't have fear about my life. I'm very comfortable with in a sense, I've died 500 times. I've had all kinds of medical issues all my life. So there was certainly times I thought I might be killed. And there reached a point where I thought I was going to be killed unless I got public about things. That's really when I first took my first steps. Actually, I started spreading news to people around me. So if I got killed, people would know. And then I went public to the world about some things and parts of this in 2019. And I can tell you today that I'm kind of grounded at the moment in the Middle East because I do have some health issues going on, but I've received a warning from somebody high up in the US government. Your life is not safe in the United States of America until Donald Trump is president. I happen to have already been grounded with some health issues, but I have recently received a warning from somebody very senior that do not return to the United States. Your life is not safe in the USA until Trump is president.
Is this
Yeah.
docuseries
Go
scaring
ahead.
them a bit in terms of some of the things that's discussed?
Well, I'm sure it is. And the neat thing about it is it can all be confirmed in 5 minutes. Everything I have to say can be confirmed in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
This all started as a coup from Barack Obama against Hillary Clinton.
Mhm.
And this is easy to demonstrate. They've already shown me that the Durham Commission got the bribe. They found the bribe. They showed me the bank a statement of a numbered account in Azerbaijan that had an $18 million deposit in it. The week I told them they would find it, in the country I told them they would find it, and they told me that was Hillary's bribe. So they've had that for 4 years. I mean, that just tells you how corrupt everything is. Warren Buffett told me to go public. And he said, when I went out and finally just explained to him what was going on, he said, you got to go public. And I said, some people in DC are going to go furious. And he said, Patrick, you let them do their job. You're a citizen, you do your job. Your job is to go public. And I said, well, I'm kind of working with these groups now and the DOJ is this and that. And he said, Patrick, all they're going to do is use your information to turn it into trading cards and chits. And one guy gets a federal judgeship out of it, and one guy gets a promotion. That's all. You just have to go public with it. And at the end of the day, he was exactly right. That's what they've done. They've sat there. They've had all this information. They proved it. They proved it to me in summer of 2020 that they had it. They found Hillary's bribe. I'm sure the agents and the people who got all that together, they turned it into, who knows what, professorships for themselves or
Of
federal
course.
judgeships for themselves. That what they didn't do is what the law said they should have done. And it's just as hopelessly, it's silly to say, but DC is so hopelessly political that it's so corrupt that even basic rule of law principles, like someone's taking a bribe, that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
That's the knowledge of that just gets turned into playing cards that they use to improve their position in the bureaucracy.
Absolutely right. That is the currency that DC operates with. So it's absolutely horrific, but that is the reality that I think a lot of people are realizing. And what I will say to the audience is continue to talk about this. Go watch the docuseries and make sure you share it out. And so kind of switching gears, Patrick.
Actually, before we go on from that, can I tell you a funny story?
Of course.
This two hardest times I've ever seen Mike Flynn laugh. I'll tell you,
I love
I'll
those.
just tell you one of them was the day after the J6 committee opened, the hearings opened, and Liz Cheney had gotten up and made some sanctimonious speech at the opening of the committee. She said something in it along the lines of, and on December 18th, as she built her crescendo, and on December 18th, the Oval Office was penetrated by General Michael Flynn, Sidney Powell, and somebody else. And Mike Flynn came in the next day. Next morning I saw him. He was doubled over laughing in the parking lot. And he said, "Why are they afraid to say your name? What?" And I said, that's when I said, sir, sit down and listen to me for a moment. I'm kryptonite to them. My name is kryptonite. They cannot center me. I am kryptonite to the deep state. And I walked him through this story again in elaborate detail. And
I
that's
love
actually, he thought about it a couple months and he said, we got to get your story. He got that it is kryptonite to the deep state. So anything your viewers can do to spread the word, if you want to attack the deep state, I know it sounds self-serving, get this movie out there. That is kryptonite to the deep state. What's especially great about it is, without giving away, it shows at the end of the day, I created a sting on what I thought was Comey or Brennan.
Ooh.
And it turned out it wasn't Comey or Brennan, it was Obama. And it's hinted at the movie, but he's the one who signed off at the end that allowed things to go forward. He signed off on the rape and murder. Pardon me, shouldn't laugh. But what I eventually did, I got in this real jam. And so I was being pulled and crushed in different directions. I eventually told my handlers that I had drugged Maria Butina and raped her. And because that hangs a noose on Comey and Brennan if they let it continue. And when they let it continue, I then offered to murder Maria. And that turns out to have gone all the way to Barack Obama. And Barack Obama was faced with a choice. Do we stop this setup of this fake Russian hoax and this and that, or do I sign off? And the big secret that'll come out someday is that Barack Obama signed a presidential finding directing 3 federal agents to ignore their belief that I had drugged, raped, and might kill Maria Butina. So it's the
Wow.
greatest sting in history. It's the greatest sting in history. I meant to get Comey or Brennan with it, but it was Barack Obama. And it's so antithetical. It does so many things. It's so antithetical to his image. And it ties him into the Russian, the Russian hoax. Up until now, the party line is he became aware of it in early January 2017, just before he left office. It was all Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton had nothing to do with it. It was all Barack Obama, James Comey, and John Brennan. It was their manufacture. Hillary Clinton, they just hung it around her neck afterwards.
I'm glad you gave me that clarity because that was one of my questions. Like, why did they let you keep seeing Maria Butina when they thought this was going to happen? I didn't get it, but thank you for clarifying that.
Well, so I knew that I was implicating whoever was on the other end of my chain of command, and it turned out it was Barack Obama.
Wow.
And this is the same month. I always like to point out that Donald Trump got in trouble for saying a little locker room talk on an Access Hollywood tape, as if,
Who doesn't have a tape like that? We've all said things we shouldn't say.
yeah, I used to be a philosophy grad student, and the most philosophy students are female. And from time to time, Katie, I found myself at dinner with 4 or 5 women, and they would kind of forget that there was a man at the table and start talking like women do.
Yep.
And what I discovered is not all women are saints either. But
No, definitely not.
and the truth is, they talk in much greater detail than men talk. They talk in much greater detail about such things. So for the whole mainstream media to get the vapors that Donald Trump said something crude in private to another man, give me a break.
Yeah.
It's all, they count on people to be suggestible, that if they are on TV and they get the vapors and how upset it is, they'll get other people upset. But
It's manufactured outrage. I mean, any real woman would not be offended by that because, like you said, I cannot tell you how many times I'm like, what, this is how I talk. Like a lot of real women are like that. And so we don't get offended by things like that. It's all manufactured outrage.
all manufactured and asymmetric. It's
Exactly.
asymmetric.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
But speaking of Donald Trump, was that meeting in the Oval Office the first time you met him?
That's the only time I've met him.
Wow.
4.5 hours. And
Yeah.
I mean, I guess twice since then I've been by Mar-a-Lago for drinks, and we shook hands and
Yeah.
acknowledged each other across a room or something, but we've never had any substantive engagement since then. I think we both knew that there would be too high a chance that if we had any kind of substantive talk, someday one of us would be answering questions about it to a lawyer or a deposition or a Senate committee. So I think we're both understand each other well enough that it was just like,
Yeah.
we acknowledge each other, but don't have any actual speech.
But that's
Actually, he
what,
admired my suit.
yeah.
Because when he saw me the first time, I was like in dungarees and a Lululemon shirt and a leather jacket. But when I showed up at Mar-a-Lago, I was in a Tom Ford suit like he wears. And
Nice.
he did look me up and down. He was like, he
Nice.
was really impressed that I cleaned up for him.
That's great. And that's the thing I want people to understand. And I think over time people are getting it more. Everyone the media bashes there's a reason for it. Just like they
We're the
just
good guys. We're the good guys.
Yeah, exactly. The good guys are the ones that the media tells you are bad guys. And I think it's just that simple. You've seen how they attack Donald Trump. You see how they attack Patrick Byrne. You see how they attack General Flynn. It's all of the people that are doing things to put this country in the right direction that they're afraid of, that they're going to try to make you hate.
And they've started up again. I got a couple messages in the last 48 hours, like the orders have gone out again to do this to me. And suddenly there's journalists writing me, and I'm about to do a story on this and that, and that, and I don't even respond. But they tell them I'm writing a story that says this and that, and you're an extremist, and you fund extremist groups, and I don't even bother responding. But it's manufactured.
Of course, of course. And now that Donald Trump has been elected, I mean, we saw what they did to his presidency in 2016 with like everything we've been discussing with the Russia collusion. It's always something. And there were a lot of bad people in government who made it very difficult for him. So that's why his cabinet picks right now are so important. and who he puts in government and what he does, to shrink the government. But in the film, you did mention a meeting with John Radcliffe and Devin Nunes. So what are your thoughts on the cabinet picks that Trump has put out over the last couple of days?
Well, I love many of them. I wish I saw Mike Flynn there. I think Mike Flynn would horrify. I wish he were National Security Advisor. Donald Trump's biggest mistake, and he doesn't like attention drawn to it probably, but that the moment he let the deep state take out Flynn, the moment he let a worm like Mike Pence insist that Mike Flynn had to go, his goose was cooked. Mike Flynn would never have let any of that Russian hoax, the Mueller Commission, and that nonsense go on. But Donald Trump had never spent a night in Washington. He'd never spent a night in Washington, D.C. He didn't. And Mike Flynn is the best mind. I've worked with all kinds of people across Washington, D.C. And there's a lot of, I know it's fashionable to be a hater on government people. I'm not. I've been very impressed with the quality of intellect I meet across the government. I mean that. There's from law enforcement and lots of areas and the national security community and the DHS. I've met a lot of really, people who could walk out and walk into an executive job at a company and be perfectly at a good company and be perfectly able. I mean, they're very strong players. I've never met a mind like Mike Flynn's. Mike is just hands down the best brain I've ever met in Washington. So he really, I think that the original sin of the first term was that he let Mike Pence insist. And when the transcript came out, it turns out Mike Flynn hadn't dissembled or lied or anything. It's just Mike Pence had gotten the vapors.
Exactly.
It was terrible what happened. So I do like that. I'm a little bit worried about John Radcliffe at the CIA. John Radcliffe had people who are lawyers and people who are prosecutors work on a different timeline than normal people. John Radcliffe had all the information that's in that movie. He had that in 2019, 2020. Wow. Yeah. He could have called a hearing. He could have had me testify. Instead, he's a prosecutor, and prosecutors take 2 or 3 years to build cases and get everything in a row and stuff. And it's not an executive position. You need somebody, who's a forceful executive, I think. So I worry that, but I think on the other hand, all these people learned their lesson last time. I think Trump was way too gentle in the first administration. He was not at all the tyrant that he deserved to be. He deserved to be much more muscular because of what they were doing to him. And instead he let them get away with this. I don't think that, and I think John Radcliffe let the deep state maneuver him as well. I don't think that's going to happen this time. I know it isn't going to with Trump, and I'm hoping it isn't going to be with Radcliffe, that they're going to go in a muscular kind of way and do what needs to be done.
Agreed. I agree. I mean, in terms of, what happened in 2016, Pence, I believe, was part of that deep state that allowed this Russia collusion to happen. So do you think, moving forward into this next administration, I know that, Donald Trump did mention that he's got to make serious moves on day one. And that's why the media said, oh, he's going to be a tyrant day one. If he does that, is there a chance that this next term won't have all of this Russia collusion media craziness that would stop him from being able to take care of things and get things done?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It'll take him about a week to do what he needs to do in some areas that will completely expose. For one thing, we need to expose what happened in 2020. It'll take him 10 minutes to send what I was asking him to do in that fateful night in December 20 was to send some federal agents. And now we know even more precisely exactly what to look for, exactly what to do. But for example, in Georgia, there's 150,000 ballots from the 2020 election that were mail-in ballots, yet there's a dozen affidavits that say none of these ballots were ever folded, so they weren't really mailed in. They were the votes in them are perfectly circled like only a computer would do, and they're 93% for Biden. So we can get to the bottom of the 2020 election in 10 minutes. Send some DHS agents; those ballots have been preserved. Send some DHS agents to go look at them and see. If that turns out to be the case, then we know immediately that the Georgia was flipped, Georgia was stolen. And we have similar tasks for each of the other 5 swing states that he lost. That would take no more than 10 or 15 minutes for a set of federal agents to go in and look at. And like in one day, he can show that the 2020 election was stolen. He could show it in the morning. He should on the afternoon of January 20th if he wants. Wow. And then that resets everything. Now you've got this whole narrative that he was committing an insurrection has a stake through the heart. 1,400 people sitting in prison. You got to look at that one again. And third, you got to ask, well, who did this? Who coordinated this? We seem to have some traitors in our midst who overthrew in a national election in a very coordinated, not just normal retail cheating, but in like this RICO kind of way. Let's figure out who that is. It would take Mike Flynn 48 hours. Mike Flynn is the greatest man in history of unraveling enemy networks. That's what he did over in Afghanistan and Iraq. It would take him about 48 hours to get to the perps behind that. Whoever did that, that'd be a nice place to start. If Trump gets sworn in on January 20th, by about January 23rd, we can have the answer to what really happened back 4 years ago. And then the question arises, it starts making sense. A lot of weird things that have happened since then. The COVID, the vaccine shots, the entry of 20 million military-age men into our society that nobody ever signed up for. All that starts making sense. If what I'm saying is true, and those 6 places can be proven to have been stolen, then we just have to figure out who did that. And it's going to be very easy to look back 4 years and see who gave the orders to do these in these 6 different states to do that. Won't take 4 days. And we got to find those people. And I bet they're connected to the fact that we've also had 20 million military-age men migrate to our society. I bet those are connected. And then people will understand finally what we've been living through is a soft coup. What we're living through is a hijacking, is an overthrow of the American Republic.
Do you think those military-aged men were brought in for a war, essentially?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you should look this up, Obama in his last 18 months in office went out and did something very strange. He bought like 2 or 3 million AR-15s and 1 trillion rounds of ammunition. Mm-hmm. And he sprinkled them through agencies and depots all over the country, and actually also on Indian reservations. There's depots, huge depots of this have been maintained. And I think he did that in anticipation of the day that they could collapse the southern border, and this would be their fighting force. What they learned really in 2020 is they can do their Antifa stuff. They can do it, but the latte boys in Antifa don't have the mass or the muscle to actually do any sort of serious insurrection. But now the latte boys have 20 or 30 million people have come to this country to back their play. So I'm not going to breathe a sigh of relief until we get to January 20th. Because I'm afraid that they can blow the whistle on that, and several million of those people mean us harm. Not all of them, but I'm sure a couple million of them are here and intend to do us harm.
In terms of elections, so I personally am dealing with some election fraud that we've uncovered in the state of New Jersey in this last election. So I will tell you personally, it is extremely difficult to get eyes on it. And it's very, very frustrating. So I'm going into this election, I'm like, oh, great. The RNC has attorneys everywhere. People understand there's corruption. So if we find anything, we're good. We've got a place to go. Not at all.
Not at all.
Got no support. It's
the RNC's terrible. The RNC's terrible. Lara Trump was a big step up, but she's one person, right? And she's gotten shined on. She doesn't have even some of the things she says tells me she doesn't understand at the retail level how this all works. She was a big step up, but yeah, the RNC is useless. They're part of the problem.
So what do you say to people that have because it's not just in New Jersey. I know people all over the country who have instances of fraud that they've uncovered. What do they do?
At this point, I'd say just gather the evidence, file suits if they can file it, but we need an RNC that's really willing to fight the fight. And that means overhauling the current RNC. The current RNC is terrible. It's such a bunch of lifer, establishment, country club Republicans. The Democrats have made an industry out of. I think that 1 in 4 votes, Democratic votes in this country, my guess is about 1 in 4 of them are fake at this point.
Wow. That is a
So
big number.
we're really a much more Republican country than we know. And I think they've really consistently found a way, maybe 20-25% of their votes are fake. I think in 2020, it was more like, 35% or something. So, but
Right.
they've made an industry out of it. It's an open secret in most hardcore Democratic communities. It's an
Yeah.
open secret. It can be fixed like that. It can be fixed with a pen stroke.
I saw this movie, by the way. It was enlightening. It was great to watch. It was awesome to kind of see some of the stuff you lived through. And I'm sure there are a ton of stories you have, like especially that Oval Office meeting, kind of getting the audience being able to see that. Do you
And the
plan on
whole,
doing more? Or is there going to be another part of the series? Are you going to add on to the series?
maybe to cover what I've done over the last 4 years, but and that's going to be an even funnier story someday. What I wanted them to depict, so people should understand, I didn't make this movie. It was Matt Thayer and Joy. They took my book and they adapted the parts they wanted, and Mike Flynn oversaw it. What I wanted to show is that Oval Office scene to show there was nothing extreme or crazy at all about what was being
Yeah.
discussed. And we laid out some options, and Donald Trump at every step took the most light footprint option that he could take. And, clearly with the mess that we were in this election, we were saying, look, you can do an investigation, you can do a detail, or you can do a very quick investigation. He said, a quick investigation. And I said, you could do 6 counties or 12 or 31. He said, just do 6. And I said, we can either do really deep investigations or just check, really just take an image of a hard drive in each place and then analyze it. He said, just do that. So he had every option was taking the least invasive. And when I said, sir, if we don't find what we think we're going to find in a couple of days, you should concede. He immediately said, Pat, I will have no problem doing that. If I think that if he's won fair and square, I will have no problem conceding. You see that out there? I can walk out to January 20th. I can walk out to that lawn and get in Marine One, and I'll leave this city. I'll never spend another night in this city. I've got my friends. I've got golf courses. My life's going to get a lot better, Patrick. But can I really do that if I think this election was stolen and there may be foreign governments involved? Can I really do that? Well, so there was nothing extreme or inappropriate at all about his musings about that. And at the end of the day, he got talked out of it by Rudy Giuliani, who I think is a menace. Rudy Giuliani, as I made clear in the book, was so. I'll tell you something, though, and I used to admire Rudy Giuliani, but people have to take a knee. They have to have the integrity and character to take a knee when they should,
Yeah.
when they're not able to function. Rudy Giuliani, first of all, is a hardcore alcoholic. It was way over his head to try to do this. Secondly, I'm the guy who tried by about November, a few days after the election of 2020. It was my job to sit and try to explain to him this theory about Venezuela and the machines, which turns out is really the truth. And at the mention of the word Venezuela, he immediately just sort of brushed all that aside. Well,
Why?
it turns out Rudy Giuliani has a client who's basically the CFO of the cartel. Rudy Giuliani had a client, a lobbyist client, named like Betancourt, something like that, was his client, who's a serious money guy for the cartel, and really wanted to hear nothing about the machines, nothing about Venezuela. And I'm not saying he did that knowingly covering up, but he was drunk. He's drunk at 10 o'clock in the morning, and he just knew he didn't want to. Rudy wanted to file a couple token challenges and then go home. And when you're 85 and at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're drinking your whiskey, and the fate of the world hangs on your shoulders. At some point, you should just surrender the keys and go home and
Agreed.
go to bed. And he did not do that. And that almost cost us the world and the country. Now, it's by the grace of God that we may have a chance here if we can make it 2 months.
Yeah, that's
Two,
incredible.
I think they were planned for these 4 months. I don't think it was by accident. I think they tried to ruin this country. I mean, the things they did, like the withdrawal from Afghanistan and stuff like that, are so bad. It's
Mhm.
hard to imagine that's just ineptness. I feel like they've actually tried to destroy us.
Absolutely. And it's obvious at this point. I think it's what activated so many citizens to say no more. Like, this is not okay, and I need to do something about it. And that's why I'm so grateful to you, because in everything you're talking about, look at, like you said, with Donald Trump, he could have just gone home and said, forget all of this. I'm not dealing with this anymore. You could do the same, right? All of the people that have been attacked and sacrificed so much, and it's a thankless job, right? It's a thankless job trying to save the country when you know there's so many forces who want to destroy it. And so
Yeah, I
I
could have
can't
gone and
thank you.
enjoyed the last 4 years and just been enjoyed retirement. And I think Donald Trump knew that if he didn't run and win, he was going to spend the rest of his life in prison, and they would take his whole fortune. This is a socialist. This is a Chavista takeover. They
Yeah.
would wipe him out. He'd die in prison, and they would take everything from him and his family. So he had to fight. I mean, not to take anything away from him. And he has an unbelievable historic ability to connect and to motivate the masses. That, I mean, we've never seen anything like it.
Patrick, I don't want to jeopardize too much more of your time. I'm gonna keep you on after I unhit record, but um, but thank you so much. I want to remind the audience to go to enemywithindocuseries.com. Check out the film. It is incredible. And the book as well, right, Patrick?
The book, Danger Close.
Absolutely.
You can't
So
remember the name of the movie, just go to Patrick Byrne movie and it'll come up. It'll lead you there.
perfect. Thank you so much, Patrick. Please stay healthy, stay safe over there, and thank you for all that you've done. I am completely honored and grateful to have you here today.
My pleasure. Anytime, Katie. Thank you.
Hey guys, Defender of the Republic here. You may have seen me on TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, Twitter, or Truth Social. Free speech is no longer a right, and tyranny surrounds us every day. Those of you who have helped me build my platform, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it is you who have kept me going. The great patriots of this country are like none other, and when we work together, there is nothing we can't achieve. I, like many like me, have spent many sleepless nights and sacrificed so much to be able to use my voice for the purpose I believe that God gave me. My hope is that one day, true freedom will be restored, not just here in America, but all over the world. My hope is that those warriors God has put here at this time will awaken to their true purpose. In the words of a man who has endured years of public injustice, there is no mountain we cannot climb. There is no summit we cannot reach. There is no challenge we cannot meet. There is no victory we cannot have. We will not bend. We will not break. We will not yield. We will never give in. We will never give up. We will never, ever, ever back down. As long as we are confident and united, the tyrants we are fighting do not stand even a little chance, because we are Americans, and Americans kneel to God and God alone. To the many like me who've been silenced, we will rebuild. We will keep coming back, and we will continue to share truth. Thanks for listening.